Rolled in. Okay, looks like we're all good. Okay, so welcome everyone who's just joined. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes, well, a couple more seconds to a couple more minutes for anyone else that wants to get involved to log on and join. It's probably good to mention now as well, for those of you that have already joined, we're going to be using Otter AI to generate live transcript subtitles of the webinar for anyone that feels like they could benefit from that. So the link to access that is going to appear in the chat box as well. So feel free to use that. Yeah. And we will just wait a couple more minutes. As we kick things off as well, you will all see a poll on your screen, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. For the benefit of people that are watching the session after it's been pre-recorded, the poll question is going to be, what is your preference for flexibility / working to work, returning to work? And the answers, or the options to answer, are hybrid. So for example, like a 3 to 2 day split, 5 days a week in the office, 5 days a week from home, or just a 1 day a week in the office. So yeah, if all of the audience that are logging on as well, when they see that pop up, if you could vote, that would be great, because then we will be able to discuss your answers and see what the majority think as well. Okay, we're on 2 minutes past. I just want to give it another 30 seconds or so for everyone to join, and then we're going to get going. Okay, so the poll has just appeared on everyone's screen as well. So please, could everyone cast their votes, and then we're going to get going. Perfect. So good evening, everyone. Or if you're joining from somewhere in the world that isn't Ireland, then good afternoon or good morning. Welcome to Sodal Social. This is titled Reopening the Workplace, Adjusting to the New Normal in Ireland. The pandemic has changed the way we work forever. Mindsets have shifted, and adapting to a working remotely or hybrid working model is the new normal. Companies like Netflix, Twitter, Dropbox, and Slack have even enabled employees to work from home permanently. And according to the Irish Times, this year has seen a huge increase in the number of people resigning from positions and changing roles across Ireland. However, the demand for talent in Ireland is still increasing week by week by week. In this webinar, I'm joined by some amazing business leaders and employees to discuss how exactly we can adapt to the new normal and ensure we are attracting and retaining the best talent as a business, whilst keeping the current workforce happy and healthy during these difficult times. Throughout the webinar, you can expect around an hour of panel discussion. That's including a live Q&A at the end. And then we've got half hour of networking following on from that for those that wish to continue the conversation further. My name is Ben Prince. I will be the host and chair for the webinar. I work for Trust in Soda, and I'm one of the ambassadors for Soda Social. By day, I'm a technical recruiter. I specialise in placing digital resources into businesses across Ireland. And this is great because it's enabled and kind of inspired me to run this webinar through speaking to like a huge number of managers and team members across Ireland about how the pandemic has changed the way they work and affected them all differently as well. Here we go. We want to make the discussion as engaging as possible as well. So if you've got any questions for the panel throughout, feel free to ask in the side pane in the chat box, or hold on to your questions until the Q&A at the end, and we'll get through as many of these as possible as well. And so we are going to get on to introducing everybody. Oh, and look at that. Just before we start introducing everybody as well, we've had the results come up on the screen. So we've had quite a few votes on here as well by the looks of it. So just for those of people that didn't hear me to begin with, we were asking, what is your preference for the flexibility on returning to work? The options were a hybrid model, so like a 3-2 day split, 5 days a week in the office, 5 days a week at home, and 1 day a week in the office was also an option. And it looks like 1 day a week in the office has taken the majority of the votes with 55%. And then there's 27% are on a hybrid working model for a 3 to 2 day split. And then there's 9% each for 5 days from home and 5 days from the office, which is kind of interesting to see. I thought a lot of people would have wanted to spend a little bit more time in the office than 1 day a week. I know we haven't introduced ourselves yet, but does anyone in the panel want to kind of throw their opinion onto that? And is anyone surprised by them results?
I'm like, I can go. This is Kalyan here. I'm like, a lot of companies are switching over to the hybrid model. I think that's the kind of thing. But I think personally, I would also like to, if I had the chance to vote, I would actually go with the 1 day a week. Because I just need to have that personal connect with my team and the other peers and stakeholders. But otherwise, I think a lot of us are productive, and we have proved that over the last 2 years that we've been able to deliver our goals successfully. So in my opinion, I think that 1 day is still fine. I still call it as a hybrid. I know it's just like having 1 extra day more, but I think still it's a hybrid model. But it will force the team to be in and around the offices, not that they're totally in a different country. I think that there's also some models around that one.
Excellent. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate that. And Leanne, I was interested to hear your opinion on this as well, as someone that's not a manager and someone that kind of works actively in a team. What's your opinion? What do you prefer, and are you surprised by the result?
I am a bit surprised by the result, to be honest, because 1 day is very minimal. I think personally a hybrid, like 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, I think that would be great. But I do believe that getting into the office and seeing your team members and being able to ask questions in the office, it's very valuable. And also, as Kaylin was saying, that we have shown that we can be productive at home. So I think whatever works for the company. Some companies need everybody back in the office. Other companies can afford to do a hybrid model. And then if you're only going to have 1 day a week in the office, there's the cost of having that office, paying for the space if you're renting. So I guess it depends on the company. And I would prefer more than 1 day, maybe 2 days personally.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. I think 2 days for me is quite valuable, encourages a lot of collaboration, and like keeps a good relationship with your team. And yeah, like you said, like it's so much easier to just ask people questions and get a lot of things done when you're stood face to face with people. But no, that's great. Thank you very much, everyone. And look, let's move on and let's kind of introduce everyone now. So I'll just bounce around. Obviously, I've already introduced myself. Jane, if we open up with you, do you want to jump on and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ben. Hey, everyone. I hope you're all well. My name is Jane. Jane Gormley, and I am the Director of Employer Engagement in Code Institute. So what we do in Code Institute, we're in EdTech, so education technology, and we have a kind of a global platform that teaches, it's a diploma. So what we're doing is basically in an accelerated way, training people all over the world to become full stack developers. So obviously we incorporate technology, and I suppose on the subject matter today, there's been a really interesting couple of years for us because our product is fully remote and all of our learners have been working fully remotely, and I suppose we've had to join them. So that's what I do there, and my role is involved in kind of the career aspect of it. So as people move away from the program and into a role in technology, I sort of bridge those relationships between the coders and industry.
Excellent. Perfect. Thanks, Jane. And then the only person that we haven't heard from so far is Jan. So Jan, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so hello everybody. My name is Jan Leroux-Falve. So I am the head of software development in Xintech, and we provide fraud and revenue assurance solutions to mainly telecommunication operators. We're a small enough company. We're about 10 plus employees located in Tralee, County Kerry in Ireland. So yeah, that's a very nice company to work with anyway.
Perfect. Thanks, Jan. And then Leanne, would you mind introducing yourself fully?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Leanne Lacey-Byrne. I'm a front-end developer with 4 years experience with the Angular and React frameworks now. And I worked at the beginning of the pandemic with a small company, or similar, 15, 30 people, so not tiny, but smaller. And now I work for a very large multinational corporation and did this switch during the pandemic. So have a bit of experience with both small and large companies and return to work and working from home. So thanks very much for having me, Ben, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, it was great to have you. Thank you very much. And then Kalyan, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself fully as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kalyan Tripurmalu. Right now, I'm working as an engineering manager at Amazon. I specialized building secure platforms for processing like consumer payments. In the past, I've been also building data storage and data compliance products at Amazon and various other companies. Over the past 20 years, worked for small companies, as I think Jan and Leanne was mentioning, about with 5 people, and right now I'm with a company with about 1.2 million people here across, and hardly know anyone. My specialty is software development. I've been in development and then grew up into product manager roles, and right now I'm managing engineering developers, security engineers, and system engineers as well. So that's about me. I'm very new to Ireland as well. It's only my 4th month here. Love the place. So thank you, Ben.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And thank you all for like volunteering to speak on the panel as well. It's really, really appreciated. So look, obviously we want to get straight into the main core of the discussion now. So we've got selected questions that we're going to run through. And I know that obviously there's a few that a few different people are going to answer as well. So we'll run through these, and if anyone's got any questions that they want to add throughout this, please don't forget to put them in the chat, and we can go to them at the end for the live Q&A. So just to start with, we want to kind of get into policies and what's in place and what's been done around them and things like that. So the first question that I wanted to raise was, what was the policy you had implemented or was planning on implementing before Ireland switched back to working from home in November? Jan, I know when we spoke before, you had an interest in input for this.
Yeah, so as we are a very small company, policies are more like talking to everybody in the company and decide what we want to do. But the idea actually before November, the switch back to working from home was 3 days in the office and 2 days at home for a certain period of time, and then maybe going more into the office depending on the situation and how it would evolve. But yeah, that was the policy was really discussed. There was no written document done by an HR department which would be then applied across the company. It was more an inside discussion, involving everybody and making sure that we didn't leave anybody aside in the process.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I suppose that's a huge advantage of being a smaller company, is that it's so easy to be inclusive for everyone and make sure that you're catering to everyone's needs. So yeah, that's brilliant. And then Jane, obviously you'll have a different view of this and a different scenario with this as well. So we'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, so to give some context, I suppose our organization's a bit bigger than that. We're about 85% of us would have been based in the office kind of normally before everything changed, and about 15% actually would have been remote based anyway. So we had a real contradiction in how everybody worked, and it worked really well. But there's about 100 of us all together. So when we sat down to try and figure out how to slowly return to work or return to the office, the policy was really pretty complicated, to be honest, because firstly there were limitations on how many people you could have in the office. So that was sort of your starting point. And then there was this huge consideration that had to be made as to, firstly, what were the business needs? And secondly, what were kind of the individual's needs? Everyone's situation was a bit different. Wasn't a straightforward environment because you weren't just mapping out a policy that you knew wasn't going to change. So there was a lot of conversation, and that basically involved kind of all of the managers of the different teams kind of talking to their individuals and seeing what were their preferences, and then trying to figure out a way to manage everyone's expectations in a way that everyone was comfortable and as happy as we could we could make everyone within the framework. So we had sort of settled on a situation where it was very evident there was two particular teams who really wanted to see more of each other and felt that they would work better if they had a space to do that in, and that was our sales team and our marketing team. So from there, it was a kind of a breakdown of how can we do it safely and how can we work out a rhythm. So we had just started that, where there was a couple of days a week when those teams were all able to kind of be together, and then obviously it changed. so I guess we'll have to pick it up again in the spring or whenever this.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, you just always constantly have to be able to adapt and change, don't you? But it's great that you can kind of work out like the teams that really need to be collaborating the most and having that face time the most and kind of giving that to them. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
And then like on to the next question, which is like, what was considered to be important when creating and planning these policies? So Jan, back to you on that. What did you guys really take into consideration when you sat down and spoke through all of this?
So I think first of all, we reflected on last year, so 2020 and the first two lockdowns, and how people felt, because I think what's very important is some people hated the working from home. Like literally, they didn't like it. It's a very personal thing, that some people will love it, some people don't. Personally, I don't really like working from home. It's just, it gets on people's mind when you don't separate professional from personal. So we wanted to take into consideration how people went through the previous lockdowns, and did they feel safe coming back to the office? What the limitations for them to come back, and to what extent they wanted to come back. Like, as I said, we basically set it on 3 days a week to start, and then see if we would go further. But you really have to consider, again, we're a small company, so it's easy for us to consider every single individual, or at least talk to every single individual and find a compromise that I don't even see how I would deal if it was 100 employees you'd have to go through.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's great. Yeah, and again, it's similar to what we said before, isn't it? It's like the advantage of having that small company is that you can kind of cater to everyone's needs, which is great. What I know you kind of touched on it briefly in your last answer as well, Jane, but what did you, when you sat down mapping this out, what was you considering?
I suppose you had to take the legalities as your starting point. Literally your square footage, how many people can you have in there? So, what's that going to dictate as a starting point? So that was the beginning. And, our office technically can hold probably around 65, 70 people very comfortably, but we were limited to 20. So, I mean, that was the starting point. You were never going to be able to bring everyone back anyway. So that was, I suppose, the first point. And then after that, it was kind of, a very even match between sort of business requirements and individual requirements. So yeah, like Jan's right. Like it was a complicated process and a time-consuming process, and it's hard because people have their own individual preferences, and then there's like practical stuff. If people are based on the other side of the country, what is the point of talking about coming back for a day? It just seems a bit silly. But yeah, they were the two main ones, and and sometimes it was quite easy because there was a couple of people who had strong preferences to be in for a day a week. There was a good business case as to why it made sense, and we could fit them. But with others, it was a little bit more complicated than that. But I suppose as well, we also knew that this was always going to be a temporary situation. So it was a policy, but it was temporary, and everybody was very aware that we just had to be really flexible about it and see how it worked, and then kind of get feedback from there.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's really good. It's good that you're taking on feedback all the time as well. Like always considering that, which is good. Okay. And then on to the next one, which is like, would you make any changes to the policies that you had in place when we were eventually like back in that situation where we're going to be returning again?
To me, yeah. Well, if we're going to be, gosh, are we? Look, everything's just so changeable. Like, yeah, I would expect there's going to be a lot of conversation again, because who knows when this will come back. But I suppose, practically speaking, we can all assume it's going to be another kind of 5-6 months anyway, the spring of the year. So it's also really distracting to be having constant conversations of, okay, well, what's going to happen next week and what we'll be doing in January. So you kind of have to let a rhythm find itself and allow people to get, you know, whatever kind of working environment they can figure out, whether that's at home or they, you know, they're able to hot desk remotely somewhere close to their home. You know, there's a couple of different solutions that are happening. So yeah, I do expect that there will be changes. But I think as a business, we're all fairly comfortable and, you know, happy and excited with the you know, the positive changes that can be made as well by having a more hybrid solution. You know, it was something that we've been talking about. We hadn't advanced the conversations, and COVID certainly kind of beat us to it by just telling us what the policy was going to be for a while. But yeah, look, you know, there are positive sides to it, but there are just so many complexities right now. Yeah, and particularly if schools close or if anything like that was to happen, you know, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that later, but it's not just, you know, let's work from home. There's lots of other things to it as well.
Of course, yeah, exactly that. And Jan, what about yourselves? Do you think that you're going to make any changes to anything you've done so far when we start returning, or is it going to be a similar scenario and just sitting people down and working out what the needs are?
Yeah, I think it will be a similar scenario because, as we said, so people's situation change over time as well. So I can see we have a young employee. When the first lockdown happened, he moved back to his parents in the countryside and he doesn't drive. So you know, it's very hard to get them to get him back into the office. And then, you know, the current situation with the renting market in Ireland, which is extremely complicated, even in small towns like Tralee, where rates are up the roof and stuff. So you have to be more flexible. And we know that, for example, that specific person cannot be back in the office 5 days a week. It's not possible. So we really try to work with them and see and adapt, decide maybe on him which days going back, because then, as Jane explained, we have the distancing in the office, even if we have a very big office for 10 people here. But still you have to do like a rolling. Everybody cannot be back at the same time on the same day unless you have enough distancing. So we will do the same. I think we will talk to we'll use a previous plan as a base and then discuss if any we need to adapt it further.
Excellent. Yeah, sounds great. Okay, cool. And then, so just moving on slightly as well then, so and like the next topic we kind of wanted to cover with this is staff retention and maintaining productivity within the staff. So as businesses or managers or as employees, what has your business done to ensure members of staff are still happy with their jobs and feel satisfied despite all the changes and the challenges that the pandemic has brought? Leanne, I know that you were keen to get some input onto this one.
Yeah, sure, Ben, thanks. Yeah, so I think working with Clover, the large multinational that I'm working with at the moment, it's just been phenomenal. Really, the way that they've kept retention and productivity is by ensuring that we're well informed. So if we need any type of updates or anything like that, we're all brought together on a call, we're given the update, and it's not continually spoke about. Like, once you have your update, that's it, we know what's happening. They're keeping us informed at every moment. So I think just that transparency and keeping people in the loop is highly effective, you know. And then with regards to productivity, we have a lot of meetings, like, and not necessarily long ones. You might have a 15-minute stand up and, you know, a 15-minute catch up. So the meetings are kept to a nice sizable amount. We don't just get on, you know, meetings for no reason. We have meetings for specific purposes and they're kept to the topic, and we're informed on what we're doing in that particular piece of work. And we have different people that are required to say if we need design or managers, we have those specific meetings set up and they're kept to that topic and a specific amount of time. So just by informing your colleagues, I think, you know, really gives them the confidence that they know what's happening. And then just by keeping things ticking over in a nice way. Whereas in the smaller company I was at before being with Clover, it wasn't as structured. We had a really long meeting at the beginning of the day in the pandemic. People start talking about loads of different things during the meeting. So you sort of lost your drive to get on with work because you'd been listening to people talk about random things for an hour and a half. So I think that approach that Clover uses is just really keeping everyone productive and keeping people informed. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And do you find that that helps you keep like a better structure with your work-life balance because of that as well then?
Definitely, like they actually severely encourage that as well. We work with an American team a lot, and people from different places. It's a huge company, so sometimes you might have to stay late for a meeting or something, but you're told by your managers regularly, continually, if you stay late, you know, you can leave a half an hour early in the morning, which I wouldn't do, but you're always given that permission. So given these allowances, and by being a little bit flexible where you can, you know, I think it just brings out the best productivity by showing people that the work that they're doing is valued. And if, you know, leave at 5:30, it's highly encouraged. Don't stay late. And if you do, you can take the time back. So just that being dynamic and understanding that we're people and we're all working from home, it goes such a long way, and you want to do your best for the company because they bring that to you.
Excellent. That's brilliant. And then Cleon, we're interested to hear from you on this as well about what Amazon have been doing and what you've been doing as a manager to kind of keep people happy and like keep people productive around all of this as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, personally, I believe that one of the key thing about staff retention, which is a huge problem for companies, right? Especially during this kind of pandemic, is to provide them the work-life flexibility. I would say I think that's a key part, and we actually ensure our team. I mean, it's a team level thing. We discuss about what are the core working hours which work for the team, because there are all kinds of people. They could be bachelors, they could be moms who have kids not sending to the daycare. So we have all kind of combination. But as a team, we kind of decided upon the core working hours. Could it be, I mean, I have multiple teams. There are teams where we start the day at 8 and we end at 5. And there are teams we actually start at 12, which actually goes till 7 because there is an overlap with our counterpart in Seattle and Vancouver. So I would say giving that flexibility and let the team decide on what actually works for them. And the reason I say that is, if I have 10 people, I can't have 5 people coming at 10 and other 5 coming at 2 o'clock. That's not an overlap. So we as a team need to make some adjustments in the lifestyle, and that actually worked out very well. So the key is work-life flexibility providing to the team. And during that, to increase the productivity, the overlap of the team members should be really as much as possible. There could be 1 hour here and there, but we try to have at least there's a solid 5 hours of overlap in the team members, meaning like there are 1 or 2 people who can start late and leave late, but at least the 5 hours of core overlap where we do the key design decisions or brainstorming of the team. So that's been working out well and actually helping them. The other part of the staff, I would say retention or attrition, is about making the employee feel that they're being heard. Now, being in the office, it's much more easier. I can be with them, and there's a lot of opportunities to know and understand what's going on in their mind, and we can do the course correction. To make that easier, what we started is doing, we increase the frequency of our one-on-ones, especially as the managers. I mean, like we talk to the team where they may not be able to share the problems or what is it blocking them or what's the actually challenges. So we actually increase the time with our team on a weekly basis. It used to be once every 2 weeks, but we started doing once a week on that. And other part about is that is also career focused discussion. A lot of these meetings once a month, we'll just say it's career focused, not talking about what they're doing at the moment, but what they want to go in the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, we kind of focus our discussions into that. So I would say these are the ones which helped us. Now, coming on to the productivity part, I think Leon just talked about specific agenda. I think that is one key thing, especially given everyone online, they're mentally prepared. What's the agenda of the meeting? What's the length of the meeting? And who are the key stakeholders? And it's called out in every meeting, and we ensure that I clearly tell my team that if you don't have a clear agenda, don't even attend the meeting. Right. We just want everyone to be very, very productive and sensitive on their time. The other part is we have very dedicated Slack channels. We are on the team, we all have Slack. It's not just one big Slack, but it's a project specific Slack. So we have multiple things where people, as if they're like, it's like huddle group, right? I mean, we have 3-4 people on the project. Let's create a project where they can keep bouncing their ideas as if you are actually talking to your someone who's sitting next to you and you just keep asking questions. So
Yeah.
that's the area we've been actually using, and a lot of discussions happen throughout the day on that one. And the other part is the on-call. There's something we can't really avoid, because being a tier 1 Amazon, it's a 24/7, 365 days, but that doesn't mean we'll burn all the employees. So we have a very strict on-call where we kind of separation of duties, and people who actually get paced in inconvenient hours, I would say anything after 7 to next day morning, we will actually compensate with time off, and also we also pay them, so that it's not just like free, but I think it is accounted for them on that. And it's seriously observed by the leadership that anything coming after hours is a kind of a area of improvement for the leadership. So that's what we actually take care.
That's great. It's great, and it's good to hear that like a big company like Amazon is still able to give a lot of power to the individual teams and employees in them teams to choose them things and make them decisions as well, which is great. And then it sounds like, yeah, similar to Leanne, like a big thing on the productivity is like the communication piece and making sure people are like well informed and know where they're at and what they're doing. So which is good. And then Jan, I know that when we spoke before, you said like there was something that you guys implemented, and there was ways that you went about things to keep people happy and keep staff within the business.
Yeah, so one of the key point, and I think Kalian actually mentioned that, is the one-to-one, very important, not only on a professional side, but on the personal side, because when people work from home, you don't know what's going on with them. When you see them in the office, you can guess when someone is not doing well, or they're trying to hide the fact that maybe they're bothered. When it's remote, it's way more difficult. So one-to-one in our company are very open. We give the space for people to talk about anything they need, and so we can actually address if there are issues. My boss, the CEO, also implemented, so it was supposed to be for the summer, but actually it has been extended now, is we moved from a full 5-day week to a 4.5 day. So we extended Monday to Wednesday. We extended, to start half an hour earlier, but then on Friday we finish at 1 p.m. And so the time difference is actually gifted to everybody as well. I think there is like an hour missing, but we said no, we'll gift to people, and it's actually making a huge improvement when people, you're working from home Friday at 1, you can disconnect and enjoy your weekend, or unless there is an emergency, of course. But that's actually something which people really appreciated. Those time changes is a very good thing.
That's brilliant. And yeah, like even for me, just thinking about that there, like if I know that I'm going to be finishing at like 1 p.m. on a Friday, or sometimes with us at Trust in Soda, we get like a 3 o'clock finish. It almost gives you like a bit of a kick up the backside to kind of get everything done and dusted, so you're ready to finish on time, and you haven't got to sit there and do a little bit more work when everyone's finishing up. So yeah, I think that's a great thing that you've implemented there. That's brilliant. That's great. And then so just going on to now, another question is, what did you implement when everything switched to 100% remote? What did you implement when everything switched to 100% remote working to maintain productivity amongst staff? And have you made any changes to that throughout? So Jane, I know you had a bit of input for this one.
Yeah, so in terms of implementing any really kind of rock solid ones, it took a little bit of while, because it took a bit of getting used to, and it took a bit of readjustment. And I think particularly at the early stages, one of the key things which we touched on earlier was that it wasn't just moving to remote. Everybody had really difficult circumstances at home to deal with as well. And like Jan was saying, the difference in somebody who's maybe sharing an apartment and doesn't never thought they were going to be there all day long, and so would all their flatmates, to people who maybe had slightly more comfortable situations where they had privacy and they had like somewhere they could set up an office. So I think the first thing was just to, again, sort of let everyone get used to it a little bit, and then the main policies, which again weren't like rock solid. They weren't sort of unbendable, but they were just, there was a lot of respect for the fact that, you know, people may have unforeseen circumstances or days that were tougher than other days, with a lot of interference or intrusion. So the first thing was really a bit like what Caelan was saying, with kind of core working hours, where, you know, we all had an understanding that maybe early mornings or late evenings were really difficult times to have meetings for a lot of people. But within teams, there was just a lot of, you know, honest communication as to what's working for me and what your circumstances might be. What we did notice was that a lot of people, particularly those who had young children at home who weren't at school and they were trying to juggle that, tended to kind of enjoy working. When I say enjoy in inverted commas, like early mornings or evenings, because during that time they might have a, you know, a bit of quiet time. But there's a danger in that too, because people will just be exhausted. So so look, there was just a real sense of respect, mainly firstly around what people were able to do and what they weren't able to do, and you know, just an acceptance of that, and a lot of trust that when things needed to be done, you could do that, but you could spread your working hours out. So I think that was the main one. And then as things kind of settled down, just trying to build that back into a team rhythm was the main thing. But you know, the real taking from it was trust and having really good policies internally and processes, so that, you know, people could rely on that rather than having to be checked on all the time, which is not a pleasant environment. And then the one other really important thing I thought that we put in was around the timing of emails. So if I chose that it suited me to work at nighttime, but somebody else was, you know, working normal working hours, that we all put on kind of timers, and emails were only sent during, you know, set kind of core hours, so that people weren't being interfered with or bothered and having this kind of 24-hour cycle of working. So stuff like that, I guess. Yeah,
that's really good. And that goes back to what we kind of mentioned before, I suppose, is about making sure that people still have that work-life balance, no matter what kind of hours work best for them to work and stuff like that, which is a great thing to do. So that's really good. Good. And then Leanne, I know you had some input on this as well. What was implemented, and what did you think?
Yeah, well, in the first company I was working with, the smaller one, we sort of all made the move to home, and we were figuring out at the time, it was when the pandemic first hit. So we started with those daily meetings, which were great, but they just ran over a bit. So, you know, I get that companies are figuring this out as it goes, and it's not easy. So, but whereas in comparison to Clover, they just had these systems. I started that job in the middle of the pandemic, so I came into a remote job, and then we were talking about going back to the office, and that got put off, so I didn't actually get to go back to the office. I'd love to go in, but they already had these systems in place. Like as Caelan was saying, Slack, we use Slack a lot, and a lot of communication is done. And from the first day in the job, everyone on my team contacted me, introduced themselves. So the collaboration and communication was set up right from day one. Like, it was really encouraged. I had daily meetings with my manager. I had weekly meetings with the site lead in the first month. Like, so just constantly being in communication, even if it's just a small little chat, and then with the Slack and the meetings and keeping people informed, they just had great systems in place that allowed the work to flourish. So it actually was so easy to come into the environment, be productive, feel part of a team, right from the get-go, because of the systems that they already had in place prior to the pandemic. So, and they just kept it going. So kudos, you know, it worked really well.
That's great. Yeah, that's really, really good. And yeah, I feel like we're following a really like similar trend here. It's about like a lot of open communication and keeping people well informed and making sure that everyone's kind of happy and comfortable, which is really great for everything to be implemented. So that's good. And obviously there's been a little bit of a crossover with the answers here naturally as well, because it's like on the topic. But the next one that we were kind of discussing was what has been done to encourage collaboration amongst staff members whilst fully remote working. So obviously, Leanne, like you mentioned there, like we've got the Slack channels in place. Similar for you, Caelan. Has anyone got anything else that they can add that they kind of implemented to encourage that while everyone was 100% remote?
Maybe just.
Oh, sorry. Continue. Go on.
I know, just because in my case, in the development world, we use the agile methodology. So we would have our daily stand-up. So everybody would have to be like if we were in the office. So they have their stand-up in the morning where they have to explain what they did the previous day, what they're doing today, and if they have any blocker, and make sure that then everybody knows what everybody else is doing and how they can help as well. So that's usually the first step, that the collaboration can be engaged for the rest of the day then.
That's good. Yeah, really good, really good. And Leanne, you had something to throw in there as well, sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and we do that as well, and it's very helpful to just get an overall picture of what people are doing, and just to say, oh, I'm stuck on this or that. So the agile approach is very helpful for our team as well. And I was just going to mention, like, not necessarily work related, but on a Friday we have a little tea and coffee half an hour where we all get together and we get into breakout rooms, and the idea is we don't speak about work. So by having these sort of meetings as well, and I understand not everyone can afford that time, but it really helped our team to just gel as a team. So then if you do have a problem, you sort of know, oh, well, this guy over on that other team, he can help me with setting up my database. Or so I think just communication, and by constantly as well, hearing from the higher ups, hearing from your manager that you can openly communicate, that it's encouraged, like to actually be told that. Because I think as a colleague, if you're just told once, oh, we encourage open communication, but then it's just never really mentioned again, and you're just into meetings and giving your update, you wouldn't feel the confidence to say, oh, I have a question. Or but if you're reminded this is an open place, like we want your collaboration, and then if you do have a suggestion, that it's listened to and you're given the credit for this idea or something like that, it just fosters a good working environment. So
yeah, that's great. And I suppose it gets you more comfortable with approaching people when you've had social scenarios and spoke to people like away from the working environment. So yeah, no, that's great. Okay, really good. And then this was an interesting one that we wanted to discuss as well, and kind of pitch in, is like what challenges were people facing when onboarding new staff members as 100% remote. Jan, I know this is something that we kind of discussed when we first spoke as well. So did you want to start with your input here?
Yeah, so I think over the pandemic, so we had a few new hires. Two of them were actually interns with us before the pandemic. So we had actually the social connection to them already, like a physical social connection. So those two, we had no issue whatsoever. It actually went very well. They got their equipment, and then it was fine. Then during the pandemic, we had actually two interns. I had the first one, we started just before the pandemic. And then after a month, we had to go into remote work, and it was okay because I could spend time. I managed to spend time, and it's easy. I find it easier when you're in the office. You can just walk to the person. And then we had the other intern this year, which has been a bit of a disaster, to be honest. That I met the intern literally 5 minutes in total face-to-face to drop the laptop when the intern started, and then to pick it up when it was finished. And the training has been extremely difficult because, again, we're a small company. So to train someone from scratch takes a lot of effort, and I find it remotely takes a lot more of effort. So that's something we learned a lot, actually, and I think we'll definitely improve if it happened again.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, and especially with people coming in at that intern and trainee level, it's such a, you're almost so in the dark about it, aren't you? So yeah, you're always going to learn and benefit from the scenario, but it's unfortunate that it didn't work out in the first place. Okay, and then Killian, what about yourself? Have you faced many issues with onboarding new staff members?
I would say initially, yes, but again, I think we are used to now with 2 years. So there was a lot of challenges about logistic, mainly the delivering the laptop. There are times when we could not deliver when the team joined, and then it's almost like 2 weeks he hasn't received a laptop. So those, I think a lot of companies actually pass through that phase now because it's already 2 years. In fact, the new Dublin team here, we are about like 25 people, and hardly there's 2 people have seen each other, and the rest of them are all hired in the last 12 months. So I think the logistic and tactical challenges are gone, but I think there is always a gap of making the new team members feel like home. I mean, like they need to connect it to the team, right? That always is there. But I think to mitigate that, there are a few things at Amazon as a company we are doing. One, I think what we had started doing is we started doing a customized onboarding plan for every engineer who comes. And that basically manager puts together the people who he has to go and talk, the stakeholders, the teammates. So this is just like a force functionality where they're going to set up these one-on-one meetings, or I will facilitate setting those meetings so that they can get to know each of the team members and understand their work. So that's one thing, which is kind of a more a formal plan. The second thing, what we do is we also assign someone called an onboarding buddy. I mean, like a lot of times it's very easy being a new person. Hey, how do I connect to this? How do I get access to these systems and all? So the first 2 weeks, there's always one person who can lean on and help on for everything. Any question he has, he will be able to. The third part, we also have some kind of a company-wide program. Like I'm part of something called Manager Coherent. In fact, this week I onboarded about 10 managers across France and different countries, Spain and all. What we do is an experienced manager will onboard these 10 new managers, and it's a 5 weeks kind of a slot, like 1 hour every week, where we will actually talk to them and hear their questions and answer them. So this is a little bit more personalized. So those 10 people, I have 1 hour of time every week so that I can share my knowledge and they can reach out to me. And we have created a separate kind of a Slack channel where we are introducing and we are kind of brainstorming on this topic. So I would say, I think with this, we are trying to mitigate as much as so that they can feel like they're actually working and they understand the people, and I mean, like the work culture and all those are being addressed to those.
That's great. It's great, and I love the idea of the onboarding buddy system as well. I think I'm going to recommend that to a couple of different clients I work with as well, because a lot of the time when I'm placing people in different businesses, I get a lot of phone calls in their first week asking me how they access this and how they access that, who to ask. So there's someone in place like that. I think that's a great idea and a great way of doing things. So yeah, that's really good. Okay, so I'm just going to move it on now as well. I appreciate we're running out of time, but there was one more subject that we wanted to kind of touch upon here as well, and something that's always going to be massively important, and something we kind of touched upon a little bit with the answers and the discussions that we've had already. It's around like mental health and well-being. So we wanted to kind of see what our businesses have done, or hear about what the businesses have done to kind of maintain and improve levels of mental health amongst staff throughout the pandemic. Jane, what had been going on in regards to that at Code Institute?
It's kind of a tough one, isn't it? Because like mental health, I suppose, is something that I don't think we would have expected any of our, our managers to be qualified to sort of assess in any way, or to approach in a personal way. So I suppose I know the word keeps being repeated, but a lot of this came back to communication and removing pressure. So, managing the business's expectations on people during what is a really tough time comes down to, what we spent a lot of time doing was making sure that all of the managers understood, and it really came from the senior leadership team, that be aware, check in, listen, and pay attention. So it just made it a really comfortable environment for someone to say, look, I'm not available for the next 5 hours because there's too much going on here. And there weren't loads of questions as to why, and complaints that wasn't convenient. So certainly in the last year, there's just been just such a bigger increase in trust, and not that the organization I worked in before was distrustful. It's not at all. But I really think that there's been a big business shift, and it's really been about respecting that people 99% of the time want to do a good job, and being allowed to do that in a way that suits them in difficult circumstances will help. So of course we did also introduce points in the week where, a bit like Leanne was saying, you meet to have a cup of coffee and a bit of crack, where it's not a meeting, but it's just like what you might do in the canteen, or on the way to go for coffee or something, so there's no purpose other than it being social. We also would have kind of Friday afternoon things where you'd wind down a bit earlier, so it was a really nicer way to end the week, rather than just kind of signing off when you've finished a tough week. So small but regular touches like that. There were really regular updates. We have bi-weekly kind of company-wide meetings where everyone's in the same place at the same time, getting kind of company updates. So you're getting really positive news about what's going on in other teams and, you know, important kind of decisions that are being made. And I think that those kind of things really help. But I think it's a universal thing that is certainly business decisions being made more around people and culture, with that being a big priority, is something that I'm seeing a lot more of. And, you know, I don't just mean in Code Institute, in lots of organizations. And I think that that's a really positive thing for companies.
Definitely.
And for,
yeah.
you know, people within them, which is what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. 100%. And yeah, and like you kind of touched on there as well, like it's something that I experienced, like the Friday afternoon social time, to kind of wind down a little bit. And yeah, it makes all the difference and helps you kind of communicate and just kind of build a little bit of a relationship with the people you're working with. So yeah, definitely. And Jan as well, was there anything done by you and your leadership team around this?
Yeah, so there are two things as well. Usually you can take care of your employees, but who takes care of yourself? And you know, the problem is when you're on let's say at the top of the chain, there's no, you know, if you have to be self-aware yourself of your own mental health and wellness. And I can tell you that the first lockdown has been a tremendous difficult time for not only me but other employees. And then sometimes it was very hard to go into a meeting, and when you're feeling completely down with not liking the working from home and feeling isolated and things like that, and you know, it's very hard to try to then help other employees when you can't really help yourself at the same time. But you know, I'd say the one-to-one definitely, again, that helped employees open up. Know the other problem you face, we in company, and exactly as Jane said, is how far can we go in that area? I mean, it's a very gray area, you know. As a company, I don't know how much you can actually ask an employee, or how much you legally allowed to ask for an employee. Medical stuff and mental health stuff for me can be a very delicate subject, and you have to be extremely careful as well on that side. But no, I'd say the one-to-one, trying to make it a safe place for people to talk. If they have a problem, we'll talk about it. We had cases, we were still in lockdown. Myself and another couple of employees would have very tough time being in lockdown. So we would find a way to bring them maybe one day in the office per week, so they could actually, it could actually help. And it actually helped a lot. Personally, definitely it did. Even if, you know, you bend the rules in a way, but there is a moment you have to ask yourself what's best for the people too. So that's definitely this. And we had those Friday on the first lockdown. It was brand new. Everybody was like, oh, we have the Friday afternoon, an hour and a half of playing and things like that. The problem was to keep it up. And after the first lockdown, it just disappeared. I think that's maybe why my boss decided, you know what, let's give the Friday to the employees. And you know, but yeah, it's very hard to keep something like this going on and motivate people to continue to participate every single week. So
yeah, absolutely. No, that's fair enough. Yeah, and you reverting back to that Friday afternoon off again, like, it's definitely a good way to help people kind of stay happy and feel relaxed and stuff. So yeah, that's really good. And then has anyone got any input? I know we was talking before about like physical health on top of mental health, because obviously with the lockdown and stuff like that, it's very easy for us to all sit indoors all day, and sometimes that can like affect us badly in different ways and slow us down a little bit. Clint, was there anything done by yourself or Amazon or within your team to encourage people to get up and get out and do some exercise?
Yeah, I mean, like since the start of this pandemic, I think employee well-being, I mean, like the group, there's a new group within Amazon who is actually solely focused on kind of thinking the programs which can keep the employees. One of the thing is they actually send out this weekly newsletter with tips on staying healthy. Like, hey, stand up for this minute. If you're using an ergonomic desk or tables, how do you actually correctly use? Because that's one thing, people are sitting for longer hours, not really moving out. We also have something called like an online workout. There are sessions where we have an instructor coming online generally Fridays for about 1 hour, like a 3 to 5, where you can just join and they just instruct you do, and you actually can do at your own desk or just stand up and then do that. So that's also, I joined a couple of times. It was really nice. There are a few sessions about laughter yoga, like laughing sessions where, so I kind of liked it. I think they're trying to, every week there's something new to just to make the people go out of their way, similar to the games. I think Leah and others mentioned about like social games and all. We do also have our own team games, but I think if you really are looking from the physical kind of activity, given that we are all kind of working at home, I think these things seems to be the one at least helping out.
Yeah, brilliant, definitely brilliant. And yeah, being able to, and I suppose that's an advantage of being such a big company, is that you can put the live workout sessions on for everyone, and you've got like the teams in like marketing and everywhere else in place to kind of send out the information and the newsletters around staying healthy and stuff. So yeah, I think they're brilliant things. And look, I'm conscious we're running out of time here as well. So what we're going to do, we're going to move quickly onto the Q&A. As we're getting onto this, the number 2 poll is going to come up on our screen as well. For the benefit of those people that are watching this recording, the poll is: in which environment do you feel most productive when working? 3 simple basic choices: it's working from home, working in the office, or mixing between the two. So yeah, if everyone watching could cast their vote for that now. And then once you've casted your vote, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask the panel, please throw them into the chat box or the Q&A box. I know we've got one in here as well. My mistake as well. Apologies to George for throwing in an opinion before. So this was on our previous poll around like people's preferences and what they prefer to do. And George said the key is flexibility. Let people choose what yeah, that's exactly what I agree with that as well, George. And it's something that we've kind of covered out throughout this, and something that Jan and Jane and Kalyan have all kind of mentioned, is that it's having them conversations with people in the teams and letting them pick what works best for them. Is really good. So just as we're waiting for them poll results to come up, has anyone got any questions for the panel, excuse me, that they would like to ask? Let's have a little look at the chat box. Just get that up here. And obviously, Eleanor, thank you very much for putting the networking event link in there as well. So the Zoom meeting for the actual discussion will finish, and then we'll move on to a networking event where everyone can have their cameras on, everyone can have their microphones on, and everyone can have a bit of a discussion as well. So this is an interesting one. So we've just had the results through. So we've had a few votes. So we've got 33% are saying that they feel most productive when working in the office, and 67% feel like they are most productive when working from home. Working between the two. And then 0% of the voters have said they feel most productive when working from home, which is interesting because obviously at the beginning we had a split between people wanting to work from home 100% of the time as well. So seems like although people might want to work from home all the time, that they know that that's not where they're most productive, which is interesting. Jan, I know from what you've been saying throughout, it sounds like working in the office is where you're most productive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, that's a personal thing. Like I need a clear separation between professional and personal, and for me the drive home is actually my clear separation where I can empty my head before I go one way or the other. When I work in the office, in the house, and you just walk down the stairs, for me that's not a separation, and you will have that temptation, let's go back upstairs to finish a few things. And no, it's definitely, like, I am not totally against, like, 1 day a week, that's no problem. 2, it's okay, but beyond, when it's more at home than work, it's an imbalance for me, and I don't like it. So yeah, that's a personal thing.
That's fair. No, absolutely. That's absolutely. Okay, well, look, just as we're running out of time, I just wanted to say that's it from us. Thank you so much to everyone, including the panelists, for sharing your evening with myself and the rest of the panel. thanks everyone for throwing in a couple of questions and a little bit of insights. And again, one more time, thank you to all of you guys on the panel for spending time with me this evening and talking through all of this. As I've mentioned, for those that wish to continue, the link for the networking is in the chat box. Please come over and join us for the networking, and any questions that you want to answer, any conversations around any of this you want to have, that's the place to do it. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you there in a few minutes time. Thanks everybody. Good night. Thank you.